Hey, I'm TheLoopyAlchemist, and welcome to today's speculation episode. Alright, so before we get into today's topic, just one thing I need to, I guess, explain back on a speculation video I did way back about what exactly happened to the Nervarine, with him going to Akvir and whatnot. So there's actually a passage in one of the 36 lessons of Vivek that actually explains that Indral Nerevar, the guy the Nervarine is the reincarnation of, and Vivek went over to Akvir for sword training. So that's a pretty big thing I missed out on. So I think that's probably the best canon reason for why he went over there. Okay, so today's topic, how will the Second Great War play out? The Great War is, of course, the massive war in between the Second Eldmeri Dominion and the Third Empire of Tamriel. Some people get it confused with, I think it's the Fourth Empire, but make no mistake, it's still the Third Empire. It's just that it's now being controlled by the Mede Dynasty, not the Septim Dynasty. If you want to know more about the Great War, I actually have a lore video on that. It's one of the earlier ones, so have fun watching it and all of its glorious crap production values. So, one more thing I need to just get rid of, take care of, say, right off the bat, is there's some talk I see in the comments going on is, could the Empire have actually won the First Great War? Should they have kept fighting? And I will answer you with a flat no. It's actually a miracle that the Empire didn't get destroyed. There's no way they could have kept fighting. If you recall, the Empire was on its absolute last legs, the Imperial city had been taken. It was really a miracle that the reinforcements from Hammerfell and Skyrim arrived when they did. That way Titus Mede II was able to tactically defeat the Eldmeri forces in the Battle of the Red Ring and retake the Imperial city. That managed to knock the elves off guard enough for him to negotiate a peace treaty, and by negotiate we mean accept the White Gold Concordat, which was the original terms that the elves had handed to them at the outset of the war. But the Empire was still relatively intact. Hammerfall, of course, seceded because of that, and at this point we think Blackmarsh had already seceded. Elsewhere had already gone over to the Eldmeri Dominion, and Morrowind is just kind of in limbo. We're not really sure if it's still part of the Empire or not, but I'm guessing it's completely independent, since the Empire didn't really do anything about the Argonians invading a couple years back. Also, it's not like they'd have the power to do it at this point at all, and at any rate there'd certainly be no point to keep troops there, because they were presumably all recalled from there during the First Great War. So, I know what you're all thinking, but wait a minute. Hammerfell kept fighting on and was actually able to fight the Dominion to a complete standstill and made them renegotiate a much better peace deal that didn't involve ceding massive amounts of territory. And well, the answer to that is terrain, location, location. As you hopefully can notice, Hammerfell is it's got a lot harsher of a climate than Cyrodiil. That's what basically won the war, I'm guessing. Cyrodiil, nicest province, easiest to live off of, so you get where, hopefully you guys can understand where I'm going with this right there. Alright, so now, the Second Great War. It's not really a question of if, but when, because, high-ranking officers in the Imperial Legion, like General Tullius, seem to think it's going to break out, and also the Thalmor themselves call the Great War the First Great War. So, we all agree it's going to happen. So it's just when. Is it going to happen tomorrow, or maybe 100 years from now? Well, I'm kind of going on the logic that it's going to happen pretty soon. Well, there's actually a few variables we need to talk about first. So the first one is the whole, does Skyrim actually end up seceding from the Empire with the whole Stormcloak rebellion thing? And does Titus Mede II get assassinated from the Dark Brotherhood? Well, as far as how the Second Great War is going to play out, I've kind of got three broad scenarios I'm kicking around my head. One where the Empire gets completely rebuilt, one where they stave off collapse and basically just keep going as it is, and another one where it falls completely. So, Titus Mede II, he's an old guy, he's probably not going to live that much longer. Anyways, it's just that his death might cause a political crisis. And that might be the spark where the Thalmor decide, hey, let's actually invade because the Empire is even weaker than usual at the moment. So, there's that, but for the two next scenarios I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to assume that we've got a good Emperor in charge. So, the first one is that this is also going to kind of assume that Skyrim is still part of the Empire. The only real reason I kind of see with Skyrim and Hammerfell, if a second Great War breaks out, I mean, well, when, but anyways, I'm going to use those words interchangeably, so I'll just say that right there. I'm assuming that the Nords and the Redguards are still going to fight on the same side of the Empire. It's just that, are they actually going to commit troops outside of their borders if they're not technically part of the Empire? Because you just think they wouldn't do that. So, to actually take the fight to the Thalmor, you'd of course need to go fight them over on their turf. And with a really, really good Emperor, you'd probably be able to convince them to go do that. I mean, especially if Skyrim is part of the Empire, you'd definitely be able to just order them down there. And keep in mind, if a Great War gets declared again, they'd probably instantly stop enforcing the ban of worshipping Talos, whatever pronunciation you guys are mad at me for using. I'll use them both. Yay, I love trolling my fan base. Okay, but yes, and it's not quite as much of a lost cause as you might think. Keep in mind the Thalmor only really got so far as they did in the first place, in the First Great War, because the Empire was just so weak. I'm not saying that it couldn't have easily gotten destroyed. Again, it's a miracle it didn't. But the Empire still has quite a few massive reserves of troops, and very good officers too. Also, they might be able to get the Argonians on board with them, like for example hiring them as mercenaries, and they might even be able to get the Dunmer from Morrowind on board as well. Because the Thalmor, so the really, really, I'll just say unpolitically correct High Elves running the show over at the Dominion, hate the Dunmer even more than the men, because they regard them as embarrassment to Mer. Why? Well, that's another episode. But anyways, yeah, definitely have the possibility to fully rebuild the Empire if we get basically another Tiber Septim. So, who knows? It really could happen, and that would actually make a great plotline for the next game. So that's kind of the ideal Hollywood super epic rebuild Tolkien Lord of the Rings. That's basically the good ending. So here's kind of the mid one. The Empire, if they're properly prepared, could at least stave off an invasion. Again, if they've got a good Emperor, but even if the Redguards and Nords, presuming Skyrim has separated, don't want to commit troops outside their borders, well, they could still work a pretty good alliance and everything. And if the Empire is actually prepared for an attack, presumably basing it off of the Thalmor's last invasion, they could probably hold them off with heavy casualties, but you never know. If you're well prepared, you might be able to throw a fork in their plans. And I hope that analogy made sense, but whatever, you get what I'm saying. If you... Yeah, you know what, that analogy didn't make sense. If I tried to explain what I was thinking in my head, we would be here forever. Okay, so there definitely is the possibility that the borders could remain about what they are right now after another war. And now finally the downfall one. So in this one, I see Cyrodiil getting completely conquered if they've got a bad emperor and they just can't organize, and if Skyrim has separated, and the Nords and Redguards don't really want to lend a hand, Cyrodiil is basically screwed because the province isn't very defensible. And yes, I know, it's got forests, it's got mountains up north, but come on, you're not going to have any difficulties invading that place. as time has, as and history will vindicate me, because as you recall in the Elder Scrolls Online, everyone's invading Cyrodiil. So, what will happen then? I'm guessing High Rock, Hammerfell, and Skyrim will sort of form a alliance, kind of like a bit of a new empire, like kind of like the Daggerfall Covenant, sort of like where they all band together and fight off the elves, the common enemy. Also, High Rock would still technically be an Imperial province at that point, so who knows, the Imperial government might flee up there to kind of run the show and everything. Also, those provinces all have really tough terrain, so that would be a pretty good way to keep the Thalmor out. And if that happens, I think the Thalmor might call themselves like the new Ayleid Empire. And yeah, that's basically my downfall one. As far as what will happen then with the Thalmor being the most powerful force on the continent, they kind of already are, but the Empire still might be able to stop them. Yeah, who knows? And if they actually get that far, they might even reinstate the. Well, before I really say that, what I was thinking, the rumor that the Ayleids, the Heartland Elves, so the elves that used to rule Cyrodiil a long, long time ago, we think they're now extinct, but they might still be hiding around in the jungles of Valenwood. So who knows, they could get on board. The Dunmer might go over and try to reconcile with the Dominion, and barring the Merrimer, Sea Elves, Tropical Elves, the guys in Pandane, or Pandania, I've heard that pronunciation as well, the Thalmor Snow Elves up in Skyrim, the Dunmer, who aren't really around, no, Dwemer, I think, I used to call, I think the technical pronunciation is Dwemer, but that was like what it was in Redguard or something. Everyone's dropped by now, even the NPCs, so I'm just gonna call him Dwemer. Barring that one guy with Corpulus, I'm not sure if he's dead at this point. But them and the elves from Yokuda, I think they're called the left-handed elves, but we don't think they're around either. So the significance of this is, barring kind of those guys I mentioned that aren't really around, we would have basically all the elves of Nirn, well, Tamriel for sure, kind of all on board if they could somehow communicate with the Thalmor and the Dunmer, and there's a bit of speculation going along that when all the elves are reunited, Aldmeris will appear again and there'll be an apocalypse type thing, so that would actually be a very, very interesting way to, well, very interesting story for the Elder Scrolls 6, and that's one I'd definitely do. One where you maybe are like, it would really be cool. Again, I think it should be in the Somerset Isles, and you'd maybe start a revolution to throw off the Thalmor. I mean, revolutions are great. We all saw how well Fable 3 turned out. Not. Okay, anyways. But, yes, they'd kind of need to get the Dwemer, whatever. Who knows how they'd work it with the races that aren't exactly around. Anyways, I'm TheLoopyAlchemist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.